Today is 11th September 2015. I shall give the instructions on the practice of Mettā Bhāvanā for those yogis who come here to join this retreat. So, as usual, this retreat shall begin with the practice of Mettā Bhāvanā for one day. Mettā Bhāvanā means to develop one's mind with loving kindness towards others. In other words, we develop this mental state of loving kindness by wishing the welfare and happiness of others. The aim of Mettā Bhāvanā is to overcome the opposites. The opposite of Mettā is dosa. Dosa means hatred, anger, aversions, resentments, ill wills, and so on. So if you have feeling of Mettā, then you have this good wish or thoughts of goodwill. If you do not have the feeling of Mettā, or instead of feeling Mettā, you have anger, hatred, then you may wish harm in the mind, or you may be cursing the mind. So eventually one may commit evil through speech or deeds. So this unwholesome mental state of dosa is also a hindrance to the progress of meditation. If one has a lot of ill will or anger, one may not be able to taste the good Dharma. So it's important to overcome dosa during meditations. So if we want to develop this mental state of loving kindness, then we have to develop the thoughts by making mental wish. We have to make a mental effort to make the mental wish. If there's no effort, then it is not possible to develop wholesome mental states. So in other words, bhavana or meditation is a means to develop wholesome mental states. At the same time, to prevent unwholesome mental state from arising. So when you make an effort to wish the objects of loving kindness, for example, may so be well, happy, peaceful, may so be free from suffering. So when you have this good mental, wholesome mental states, then it's not possible for the evil mental state to arise. So when we practice Mettā, we must have an object. The object is a living being. You may specify your objects. For example, you may choose a person as an object of loving kindness, or a group of people as an object of loving kindness, or beings who are staying in certain location as an object of loving kindness. So when you direct your thoughts towards a specific object, then in this way you are developing specific loving kindness. You are practicing specific loving kindness. But if you do not specify your objects, you direct your thoughts towards all beings, then you are practicing a general loving kindness or unspecific loving kindness. So during retreats, meditators have to develop this mental state of loving kindness all the time, regardless whether they are walking, sitting, or standing, reclining, or they have to make an effort to develop these thoughts of loving kindness. So when meditators are doing their routine activities, such as eating their breakfast, lunch, they still continue their practice of loving kindness. They do not have to pay attention or be aware of the movements, any sensations, or any mental states. So during walking, they have to choose a place to practice walking up and down or in a straight line. So during walking, they do not have to pay attention to the movements of the foot, or they do not have to pay attention to the standing postures, but they make an effort to develop the mental state of loving kindness. So at the beginning of walking meditations, meditators may wish themselves, for example, may I be well, happy, peaceful, may I be free from suffering, may I be well, happy, peaceful, may I be free from suffering. So meditators wish themselves continuously for about 3 minutes or 5 minutes. The reason of practicing loving kindness for oneself is not to gain any concentration, but to make oneself as an example. If you wish to live happily, so do other beings. If you dislike pains and suffering, so do other beings. So if you do have loving kindness for yourself, then the wish or desire for loving kindness towards others will be arising. Similarly, if you dislike people to annoy you, then whatever you do, you should not cause annoyance to others. So meditators practice loving kindness for themselves for about 3 to 5 minutes. Then they must choose an object of loving kindness. So the meditators may choose a specific object during walking meditations. So if meditators can concentrate well on a specific object, they may choose a person, for example, a person whom they respect as an object of loving kindness. Meditators only practice loving kindness in meditation for 1 day, so it's better that they choose a good object of loving kindness. If you choose a bad object of loving kindness, you may not able to develop may not be able to develop the mental state of loving kindness. You may not able to gain any concentrations. For example, if you choose a person as an object of loving kindness, then you can choose a person whom you respect or whom you like. So there are different kinds of individuals. There are individuals whom you respect. There are individuals whom you love very dearly. There are individuals whom you are indifferent to their welfare, happiness, and suffering. Then there are those who are your enemies, or those individuals whom you dislike, you hate. But when we practice loving kindness meditation, we should not lift up anyone. But if the loving kindness is not developed, it's difficult to practice to a person whom you dislike or your enemies. So that's why meditators have to begin with a good object. For example, a person whom you respect or the person whom you love dearly. Even the person whom you love dearly may not be a good object of loving kindness. A dearly loved person means one whom you have very close affinity with. If the person whom you love dearly is not well, for example, he or she is sick or ill very seriously, then you have this feeling of worry, anxiety, or even sadness arising. Or sometimes, due to the close affinity, you may have a lot of worries about that object or that person, whether he's eating well, and so on, about worrying about his safety or her safety, and so on. That's why meditators have to choose a good object so that he can develop the mental state of loving kindness well. So when they can develop the thoughts of loving kindness well towards a good object, gradually they could also, these feelings of loving kindness will be developed or expanded to the other objects. In the Pali text, the Pali text stated, one should develop Mettā towards everyone, other beings, on an equal basis. In other words, develop this Mettā towards everyone, other beings, on an equal basis, as if you have on yourself, you develop the same thoughts of loving kindness, or the equal thoughts of loving kindness for yourself. But when one is successful in the practice, one could have the tendency to discriminate, or what we call discriminations. So discriminate means you discriminate your friends. He or she is my good friends. I would treat him or her better than others, and so on. Or if that one is someone you dislike, you do not want to associate with that person, then you may draw a line, as if there's a barrier between you and that person. So you not allow that person to step over that boundaries, that line towards your, what I call your territory. So only when meditators who is successful in the practice of loving kindness, then he or she is no longer to discriminate anyone, and he attains a state known as breaking down the barriers. So at the beginning of walk meditations, meditators have to choose a good object. So at the beginning of walking meditations, meditators practice loving kindness for themselves for about 3 to 5 minutes. Then they have to choose objects of loving kindness. So meditators wish the object. For example, that object is a respected person. Then meditators wish that person may so and so be well, happy, peaceful, may so and so be free from suffering. Wish him repeatedly, constantly and continuously for about 15 minutes. As meditator, make the mental wish. That mental wish should not synchronize with the stepping. If the mind is thinking or wandering away, meditators ignore that thinking or that wandering mind and immediately bring the mind back again and wish the objects again. So meditators may wish that object for about 15 minutes. Then they could not concentrate well on the same object again. They may change to another object. Then meditators may choose another respected person or someone whom he loves as an object. So meditators practice loving kindness for the second objects for 15 minutes. Then they may change to another objects. So if meditators have 1 hour to practice walking meditations, they may choose 4 different objects of loving kindness. So these objects of loving kindness can be a person or group of people that the meditators like to associate. At their walking meditations, meditators should walk with loving kindness. In other words, they should not stop the practice. As they walk through the place of sitting, they continue to wish their object of loving kindness. So as meditators are sitting down, they should continue the practice of loving kindness. When they are paying homage to Buddha, they also continue their practice of loving kindness. So when they have settled down on the seat, then they begin the practice loving kindness again by wishing themselves again. So meditators wish themselves again. For example, may I be well, happy, peaceful, may I be free from suffering, for about 3 to 5 minutes. So if meditators are able to sit for 1 hour, so they can choose 4 objects of loving kindness. So meditators may choose the same 4 objects of loving kindness that they have during walking meditations. So they practice to the same object again. The first object, for example, may so and so be well, happy, peaceful, may so and so be free from suffering. Also wishing that objects for about 15 minutes before they change to second object. During sitting, meditators may experience pain or any physical discomfort. Meditators have to learn to ignore those discomforts or painful sensations. But when the pain is getting stronger and stronger, meditators may find it difficult to concentrate the mind on the loving kindness meditations. Then meditators may change their sitting positions or move in order to relieve the pain or any physical discomfort. The meditators should not move or change the sitting positions frequently. They may allow themselves to move or change the sitting positions about 3 times within 1 hour of sitting. Sometimes meditators have been moving or changing the sitting positions about 3 times within 45 minutes. Then they may have the wish or desire to move again. Then they should exercise control, not to move. But if the painful sensations or physical discomforts is unbearable, meditators may stop the sitting and proceed to walking again. During the practice Mettā, meditators will not have to visualize the objects. If meditators visualize the objects, for example, the persons, then meditators may not be able to concentrate the mind fully on the thoughts of Mettā. Visualize is a mental work. Then meditation is also another mental work. So it's difficult to do both mental works at the same time. If meditators visualize the objects, at that moment it's not possible to make the mental wish. So meditators will not have to visualize the objects, or they just train themselves to be aware or to be mindful of the mental wish. They also should avoid doing the way of mental chanting. Loving kindness is not mental chanting of Mettā. So meditation is to develop one's own mind. So when we practice loving kindness meditations, we are making effort to develop that mental states of loving kindness in our mind. So it is not necessary for meditators to imagine or to think that there's this feeling of loving kindness flowing up from the hearts to the objects. So when we talk about Mettā Bhāvanā, most of us have the idea to radiate loving kindness or to transmit the feeling of loving kindness towards all beings or towards the objects of loving kindness. But it is not so much on radiating or transmitting. The effort should be put, we should put the effort to develop the mental state of loving kindness in us. When your mental state of loving kindness is growing or getting stronger and stronger, then the mind will transmit it out by itself. So at that time, meditators will not have to make an additional effort to send it out, or the mind will send it out or radiate out by itself. Sometimes meditators practice loving kindness towards some objects. Then they feel that they have a strong Mettā, feeling of Mettā towards one of the objects. For example, when meditators practicing Mettā this evening and next morning towards the 4 objects of loving kindness, then they realize that they have strong feelings towards one of the objects. Then meditators may practice loving kindness towards this object for a longer time. For example, instead of 15 minutes, meditators try to practice Mettā towards this object for about 25 minutes or a longer time. When meditators are able to practice loving kindness well towards one object, and for longer time, they may be able to develop stronger and stronger feeling of loving kindness and deeper concentrations. So during the talk, we suggest meditators practice loving kindness for each object for 15 minutes. So this is just general instructions. But during the actual practice, meditators realize that the feelings of loving kindness towards one object is getting stronger. Then they may practice loving kindness towards that object for longer and longer time. So when they are able to practice loving kindness towards one object for longer time, then they may reduce the object. So from 4 objects, they may reduce to 3 objects. But when meditators practice loving kindness towards one objects, and they feel that the mental wish is very weak, very reluctant to reach that objects, then they may leave the object aside, drop the objects at the time. So they may choose another objects to replace it. Then, besides practice walking and sitting meditations, meditators also need to develop thoughts of loving kindness while they are doing their routine activities. So when you are eating your breakfast, lunch, you need to develop thoughts of loving kindness. Or when you are walking from place to place, you still have to put effort to develop that thoughts of loving kindness. When meditators doing their routine activities, they may practice general loving kindness. In other words, they may wish all beings, for example, may all beings be well, happy and peaceful. May all beings be well, happy, peaceful. So in other words, it's more difficult to concentrate the mind on a specific objects when meditators are doing their daily activities or routine activities. But when meditators are doing something simple, for example, when they are walking outside, walking from the meditation hall back to their rooms, they may also practice specific loving kindness if they wish to practice. For example, meditators may develop the thoughts of loving kindness towards all meditators as they walk outside. May all meditators be well, happy, peaceful. May all meditators be well, happy, peaceful. So for those meditators who are joining these retreats, they have to practice Mettā for one whole day. When meditators practice Mettā, sometimes they may encounter 2 types of enemy to the Mettā. They are known as the far enemy and near enemy of Mettā. So the far enemy of Mettā is a dosa, or dosa means anger or hatred, aversions. So when you practice loving kindness towards any object, if that object causes the mental state of dosa, or such as anger, hatred, ill will to arise, you may leave that object aside. But when you keep on practicing again, and you do make progress in the practice, you may be able to overcome that feeling of anger or aversion towards the object. Then the near enemy of Mettā is known as Pema. Pema means love with attachments, or selfish love, or possessive love, attachment, and so on. So similarly, if the objects of Mettā cause the feeling of Pema, or such as attachments is growing, then you may leave aside that object at that moment. So the Pema, love with attachment, is something difficult to be realized or discovered during the practice of Mettā. So one has to be careful about this near enemy. But when you are successful, then there's no feeling of this Pema or selfish love. You only have the true feeling of loving kindness. So the practice of loving kindness, you never ends with frustration, disappointment. Only the feeling of affections, attachments, love will lead to this feeling of frustration, disappointments. If things do not work out as expectations. So that's why in the Dhammapada or Dhammapada verses say that from attachment or grief arises, or from attachment fear arises. But for one who is free from attachment, so there's no grief and so there's no fear. So when you practice Mettā, you have to be mindful of these two kinds of enemies. So I wish that the meditators rightly understand these instructions about how to practice Mettā, loving kindness for one day, so that they could calm down the mind or to some extent, so that this will become a foundation to the practice of four foundation of mindfulness and gain experiences in the practice.